Okay, hello everyone and welcome back to Totally Accurate Battle Simulator. And we are here back on the ancient, or ancient classical sandbox here. And if you've read the title of the video, you probably either have an idea of what this is, or have no clue what I'm going on about. But the music in the background, which is the Rome 2 soundtrack, might give you an idea on what I'm going on about here. And if you don't, I will explain it for you. So what this is something I'm going to be calling the Total War Project for tabs. And by that, it was originally going to be recreating every base Rome Total War faction in tabs. By that I mean recreating their units and putting them all into a faction for you to play on a battlefield. However, that has changed now to be as many factions as I can feasibly do. Because if you've never used the unit creator, or if you just don't own tabs, that's understandable. Get it if you don't own it, because it's a very fun game. But if you've never used the unit creator, you can't make certain units in the unit creator by default. You have to go and do all sorts of stuff. You have to either download an external program or delve into individual unit files, change around numbers and things, which I don't really want to bother doing. But that means that you can't easily make things like horse infantry. Horse infantry, they're called cavalry. You can't easily make cavalry, and when you do make cavalry, they tend to not work particularly well. The mounted unit, so the one that's riding the horse, tends to not do very well. They tend to fall off or glitch or mess around, and that means archers are really difficult to do with horses. Regular cavalry you can do, but it's still also kind of finicky and doesn't really work properly. So cavalry is kind of difficult to do. War elephants you can do, but there's less use for them, and chariots and things that require 3 or more different pieces, so the horse, the chariot, and the guy in the chariot. Those sorts of things are pretty much impossible or incredibly difficult to do in the unit creator, which means we are limited to infantry, like these clubbers, which from the base game. So yeah, it means that anything other than regular foot infantry of some description is kind of impossible to do in the unit creator, beyond war elephants to a certain extent. And that means that there's certain factions in both Rome Total War and Rome 2 that basically only contain horses. like Scythia or Scythia. Scythia? However you pronounce it. But either way, those like Scythia and Armenia and things like that, which are heavily reliant on cataphracts or horse archers, they kind of don't really work in tabs because they don't really have enough of a variety of units to really be warrant using. So instead, it's changed to the factions that I can feasibly make in tabs with the controls that we have that don't require too much messing around. And some of those factions have been rolled into one. For example, the Celts are going to be an amalgamation of the Britannic factions and the Gallic factions. The Greek cities are kind of a grouping of the various Greeks and the Macedonians and those sorts of things, because otherwise they basically share an entire same faction of exactly the same units, except for like maybe 1 or 2 unique units, which at that point just seems a bit redundant to me. So what we've got here is I have gathered together all of the different factions that I have made now, including many new factions compared to what we are used to seeing. And of the existing factions that I have, such as the Celts, the Greeks, the Romans, the Parthians, Persians, Carthaginians, the Mercenaries to an extent as well. All of these factions have been revamped as much as I can with new units as well to try and mesh together the Total War units. Now, before I get into the factions, one last thing is that this is essentially a combination faction of Rome 1 and Rome 2 units. They will not have every single unit from both games, because various units are basically identical, except one of them has got slightly different stats, so I kind of didn't make 50 billion different hoplites for the Greeks or something like that. However, some factions do have units, well, basically all the factions do have units from both Rome 1 and Rome 2, just to keep it spiced up and give you more variety of units to use. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I'll start off with the mercenaries, because there's not actually that many mercenaries to go through, not new ones at least. Something I did do is I finally made slingers, so some sling units have been created, such as in the mercenaries here, we've got mercenary Gallic slingers and mercenary Balearic slingers. I've also made some mercenary Numidian javelinmen as well for another ranged mercenary unit. We also have some mercenary naked warriors, some Samnite silver infantry as well for a couple of new melee units. So the Numidian javelinman will be appearing in the Numidia faction later on in the video. And I will put timestamps in the description actually of the various factions if you want to skip to your favourite faction if it's been made. But yeah, the Numidian javelinman here is basically, I think it attacks faster but has less health, something along those lines, compared to the one in the Numidia, Numidia tree. As for the mercenary naked warrior, the naked warrior is a glass cannon. They will be appearing later on in the Celtic faction, so I will explain them more there rather than here. But essentially, this guy has just got less health and less damage, I think, in comparison to the one in the Celtic faction. But yeah, they're using a Celtic longsword and a big round Celtic shield, as well as a Celtic helmet, but obviously they're only wearing boots for the rest of their clothes, otherwise they don't have anything. And the Samnite silver infantry, I do not yet have a Samnite faction. When I eventually go and make things from the Rise of the Republic DLC for Rome, then the Samnite will be moved into there. But for now, the Samnite silver infantryman is a slightly better legionary, costing 130, the naked warrior costs 110. They can go berserk as well, that's kind of like their point. But yeah, all of that will be explained later. And then yeah, so the Samnite silver infantryman here is just in here as a kind of miscellaneous unit, but they do work well with the mercenary Samnite spearmen. So there you go, you've got your two different Samnite representation there for all of you Samnites watching. But yeah, as for the slingers, I finally caved after a comment suggested using a lasso and just changing the projectile from the lasso to something else. I've gone with an M2 bullet instead of a musket ball or something like that, just because I like the trail that the bullet leaves behind. But yeah, so if I just get something like the signifers of the stay guys. So yeah, what happens with the slingers is, as you can see, there they go. They will shoot. They will shoot their projectile. The Balearic slinger is obviously the more elite of the slingers. I think it has the most rate of fire, and I think possibly also the most damage as well, in comparison to the Celtic one, for example. But yeah, so these guys fire a lot quicker than something like an archer if we get a mercenary Gallic hunter, and we'll get a mercenary Italic Velite as well. So you can see how quickly each of them attack speed. So obviously the slingers fire a lot quicker, because I feel like slings would just be quicker to attack in comparison to archers or javelinmen. So yeah, they do attack a lot quicker, but obviously they still get deflected by shields, so they're not completely invulnerable, and they're also very weak as well. So you know, there's your classic javelins. But yeah, so that's the classical mercenaries. As for the Persians haven't had too much happen to them. However, I have given them Eastern slingers. They also have some hillmen who will be appearing later. They still have their Eastern archer and their Persian spear thrower, so they have still got all three different types of ranged infantry available to them. But yeah, so Persia's just had a little bit of an update. Oh yeah, they also have the mob as well now. So the mob is essentially the pleb from the Roman faction. Here, they've just been reskinned. Basically, they've got different clothing and a different hairstyle to reflect their more Eastern nature, as well as trousers and boots instead of. Oh no, they still have boots. But yeah, so the mob has now got trousers as well. But they are essentially the peasant of the Persian units. So yeah, they've still got that. They have their standard bearer. They've obviously still got the Eastern infantry, who are a worse hillman. The hillman does win in a battle against the Eastern infantry, as you would expect, even though they do not have the big wicker shield. They only have the small round wooden shield. But yeah, the hillmen are there. They obviously have also still got their spearmen and axemen and the hoplite, as well as their Parthian swordsmen, both types of immortals, and their war elephants. So nothing too fancy has changed with the Persians/Parthians, but yeah, the addition of the slinger now gives you an extra extra ranged unit to go with everything you have, obviously, alongside of your elephant and archers and whatnot. So yeah, nothing too much has happened with the Persians. Nothing has actually changed with the Carthaginians. I may go and give them a slinger unit, but otherwise they are pretty much the same. Like I said, I didn't want to basically give a faction just billions of different types of hoplite unit, because that's boring for me to make, as well as kind of, you know, the variety is already not here because they still don't have that many sword units. Base Carthage in Rome 1 doesn't have sword units, and real-life Carthage used a lot of mercenaries, which is why the mercenaries are in here, which does take care of your sword unit, because you do have the Libyan infantry. But yeah, also in Rome 2, they essentially have these guys, but not mercenaries. So, you know, Carthage was a very rich state. They used a lot of mercenaries for their armies, so that's when you then bring out the mercenary pool, and you can supplement your lines with, you know, mercenary spearmen or some Celtic axemen from Hispania, or, you know, some more mercenary hoplites, which I think are already in there. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on with Carthage. So nothing new has actually happened with Carthage. But yeah, I could end up giving them a I could end up giving them a banner guy, which I probably should do, so they might get a banner guy. But otherwise, yeah, nothing too crazy has happened with Carthage. I think the Numidian spearmen just got crushed by the elephant, which is not great for them. But yeah, so that's Carthage. Nothing much has happened with Carthage. Now, before we move on to the completely new factions, I will go over the revamped versions of old factions. So, the Greeks. The Greeks haven't changed, other than Rhodian slingers. They have now got a slinger unit, because, well, they get Rhodian slingers, I think, in Rome 2, as well as in Rome 1, I think. So, yeah, it's about time they got a slinger unit, so they obviously got the slinger unit. As for everything else, they've got their 4 types of spear unit, being the Levy hoplite, mercenary, standard, and Spartan hoplite. They obviously have got their 1 sword unit of the thorax swordsman, and we've got our mercenary Cretan archer, our Spartan youth, and peltast. So, you know, 3 different ranged units for them there. The Cretan archer is actually a lot quicker at firing than even the Rhodian slinger, so there you go. But yeah, so that's what's going on with Greece. Greece doesn't really have anything new, particularly. I could go back and, you know, look for more things, but honestly, I think they're kind of developed enough. If you want to, then again, where Greece is, you've got access easily to tribal regions, so you can get yourself some mercenary spearbands, some mercenary Celtic archers, you know, those sorts of things in your army as well, if you really want some different units, some different spear units, or, you know, the mercenary naked warriors as well. So now we come to the faction, the pre-existing faction rather, that has had the biggest upgrade. You know, Rome has had upgrades throughout time. You know, they obviously got the Gallic warrior and the hoplite, but that's nothing new. I don't think I've had them for a while. But the Celts are the ones that have had the biggest upgrade, the biggest expansion in comparison to how they were. So obviously we've got our standard bearer, the standard run guy. However, I have now given them a stay guy as well. So now they've actually got someone to hold the line with their more elite units, such as the pre-existing noblemen and Oathsworn, because I thought it was about time they had that. However, they've now got a slinger unit of their own, the Celtic slinger, who I do really like. The model that I eventually made with the cape on him. I do quite like this model. But yeah, so you've obviously got the slinger, is the new ranged unit, and then you've got your pre-existing warrior and spear thrower. You will, however, notice that the Germanic Axeman is no longer in the faction, because the Axeman has been moved to the brand new Germania faction, which I will be showing later on. So yeah, they no longer have their Axeman. However, because the Axeman was really quite good, and that cuts out one of the best units of the Celts, one of the best cheaper units of the Celts rather, that I have instead given them more units instead, more varying units. So the long swordsman we've already had, but I have now actually changed him because there is now a Celtic swordsman, so he had to be renamed. So he's now the Celtic long swordsman. But he's still the same guy, still has his big long sword and his health and whatnot, and obviously they still have their nobleman and their oathsworn and their chieftain. So the most elite units are still here of the Celts. So they still have those. Now, the naked warrior. I said I would come back to this guy. In the Mercenaries, and so now I will explain what the hell's going on with the naked warrior. So the naked warrior has got the enrage ability, which I think is the berserk ability in the Total War games, but essentially they are a glass cannon. This guy, in comparison to the mercenary, costs more, I think, or maybe the same, but he has got more health and does slightly more damage with slightly faster attack speed. But he is still just as naked as before. He just has some extra decorations on his hands, and he obviously still has his big ovular Celtic sword. Big ovular Celtic shield, and his Celtic long sword, as well as his Celtic bronze helmet. But these guys are very much glass cannon. They have 75 health, I think, for these guys. 60 health, I think, is what the mercenary has. But these guys do have the enrage ability, which does keep them safe from harm while the enrage ability is going on, and it also increases their attack speed and increases their damage yet more. It's the ability that the Jarl has in the base game. If you've only used the base game stuff, it's the same ability that the Jarl has, where they turn red and whatnot. However, you have to have them survive long enough. So if they are up against a high damaging unit, for example, if there was a long swordsman and they came together, obviously the long swordsman would most likely one-shot this guy, which would therefore negate the enrage ability. However, if they are going up against a weaker unit, such as, a whole load of plebs, the plebs don't do as much damage, and the plebs probably won't kill him in one shot, in which case the enrage ability will trigger, and then they'll go to town. So if you do have a bunch of these guys, it's a very much risk-reward scenario, because they do cost 110. 110 for a naked warrior, which is the same as a swordsman or a veteran spear. However, they do more damage than either of those guys, and they do have that enraged ability. So they can... it's the same ability that the chieftain has. So, yeah. It just depends on if they survive the hit, and the hit is enough damage to cause the enrage ability to activate. So, yeah, very much a risk-reward unit. However, they're pretty interesting of a dynamic. And yeah, if they are left unchecked and they do enrage, then they can cause a bit of a havoc for the enemy army. So that's the naked warrior. The veteran spear and the swordsman, I think, are basically identical in terms of stats. They're pretty identical in terms of how they look. The veteran spear is in the more Britannic blue colour because, as I said, the Celtic faction here is a grouping together of the Gallic and Celtic factions because they kind of share a lot of the same units, especially in Rome 1. In Rome Total War, the Britons and the Britons and the Gauls share very similar units. So yeah, veteran spears and swordsmen are kind of the legionary equivalent, because yeah, they have very similar stats. They have, I think, similar damage numbers but less health than the legionaries, which is why they cost 110 instead of the 120. of the legionaries. So yeah, they're slightly worse legionaries, but then they do cost slightly less, so you can field more of them in comparison to the legionary. And yeah, they're just like the general hold the line unit, and unlike these guys who have got the foolish leap, so they will just leap forwards in a reckless fashion, these guys have got the night charge, which is the same as what these guys have, so they are more organised. And it's the same with the Oathsworn and the Noblemen's. So what this basically means for the Celts is that you have your cheap group unit where you can just charge with strength of numbers and just hack yourself in with these guys and the long swordsmen and the naked warriors, and then you have your more organised army, your more organised warband in the form of veteran spears, swordsmen, and your noblemen's and Oathsworn. So it just gives the Celts a lot more diversity, as well as more options. More options where if your warriors don't do the trick, then you can bring out swordsmen, and then if your swordsmen don't work, you can bring out the noblemen. So that's kind of how that's working for the Celts. So yeah, that's the revamping of the existing factions. And now we move on to the new factions, based again on the Total War faction roster from Rome 1, as well as using Rome 2 units. So we'll move on to Pontus, because Pontus is right here, and Pontus does reuse quite a few units from pre-existing factions. Some of them I did make for Pontus, which have then been added into other units, such as the Mob, which has been reverse edited, or and just added to the Persians. But so Pontus has got the Mob for your cheap unit. They obviously have got their Eastern Infantry, Eastern Slingers as well, which were retroactively added to Persia. They have got Peltars, which are a different to the regular Greek Peltars, which you'll find in the classical Greek here. I think they're weaker in terms of health, but they attack quicker. I think that's the trade-off between these two guys. And yeah, so Pontus has these guys because that's based on the Rome 1 look, with their small round shield and their lack of a helmet. So there's the Peltas. You've also got your Pontic standard bearer. There's the Hillmen, who were originally made for Pontus and then again retroactively added into the Persian units. Now, Pontic swordsmen. They're the legionary equivalent. There's your basic. They're your sword unit. And they have got some greaves, protective greaves. They've got their mail armor, as well as a protective bronze helmet. So, and also an ovular shield. So, I think they're from Rome 2. So you've got Rome 2 units. They have reused the hoplite because I didn't want to make a identical hoplite just for Pontus. So yeah, they've got their hoplite. Now they also have phalanx pikemen. So there's their pike unit, and the standard bearer is using the model of a phalanx pikeman. So they're more expensive, obviously, 200, because they it's very difficult to get into them essentially because of this pike. Because this pike is so long, it is very difficult to break the pike line if you can't get around them. So they cost a bit more. They do not have the projectile block ability of the hoplite. However, they do have quite a big shield to protect them anyway. And they've also got their bronzed greaves and their Phrygian cap style helmet, which is the best I could do for the sort of curved, strange Pontic helmet that they have in Rome 1. So yeah, that's the best I can do for that, but essentially bronze helmet. And so yeah, there's the pikemen, and then they also have got their bronze shield pikemen, which are their most elite unit, as you can see, with their titular bronze shield rather. And then they have also got the hoplite helmet, and yeah, they're wearing hoplite armor because I thought it was the most suitable for them in this instance. I don't always like using this armor. However, in this case, I think it worked best. And then they do have their yellow-coloured shirt, or tunic. There you go. Just trying to remember the word. Again, based on their Rome 1 depiction. So there's the Pontic units. If you are a big fan of Pontus, then there you go. You can now play with Pontus to your heart's content. Yeah, unfortunately they do only have 2 different types of ranged units, but yeah, you know, the slinger is easily capable of taking out the lower health, less protected units, whereas the javelinman can deal that extra higher health. Although he doesn't seem to have the range. Oh, there you go, finally. But yeah, so there's Pontus. Next we'll move on to the Seleucids. The Seleucids are reusing the plebs from the Roman faction, as well as the Greek peltasts and the irregular peltasts. We've also got their Persian standard bearer, because the Seleucids are kind of a... Okay, well... There you go. Because the Seleucids are kind of a mix of Persian units and Greek units, because they are one of the Diadachi kingdoms. So there you go. You can see that this guy attacks slightly slower than the regular peltast there. However, I think the regular peltast has got less health as a result. Although it also has got the big ass shield, so I guess it kind of works out in defense. But yeah, because the Seleucids are one of the kingdoms with the Diadachi, Alexander's successor kingdoms. They're kind of mixing Greek units with native or, you know, Eastern units, which is why they have got the Persian standard bearer, as well as both their peltasts, Greek peltasts, and then their more Greek slash Mediterranean style cheap unit. As for other ranged units, Syrian heavy archers and Eastern infantry. From Rome 2, I think, is this guy, and then the archer, I think, is just a Rome 1 analogue. So, yeah, to get the sort of recurve bow style of the Syrian heavy archer, the only suitable one that wasn't the Artemis bow, which has got its own special properties, is the snake bow. However, repainting it, I think it works out fine. It just obviously doesn't have the range of the Eastern archer, and the Eastern archer has also got an incredible rate of fire. So, yeah, the Syrian heavy archer is far higher health, so if something does break through to the rear lines, the armour that they're wearing, the chain armour as well as the extra helmet, does keep them protected. I may actually have to buff that rate of fire, because that is an incredibly slow rate of fire on this heavy archer. Yeah, I may have to... yeah, I'll have to buff that. But yeah, so they're two archer units. You've got your 2 spear units, no sling unit. But you know, they're well covered in terms of ranged. They've also got thorax swordsmen from Rome 2, I think. They have thorax swordsmen. Silver shield legionaries from Rome 1. Yeah, they're very similar to regular Roman legionaries, except they've got 10 less health, as well as 0.1 times less attack speed or something like that, or they may even have the same attack speed, they just have got slightly less health, which is why they're the same price, just ever so slightly weaker than regular Roman legionaries. But yeah, they are silver shield, so obviously all silver armour, their signature silver shield, as well as a short sword instead of a gladius, because I thought that just makes more sense. But yeah, so there's the legionaries. Legionary from Rome 1, because I'm sure lots of people liked using that, so had to give them a silver shield legionary. Obviously, also got their own hoplite unit in the Persian hoplite, as well as their silver shield pikemen. Couldn't have a Seleucid faction without the silver shield pikemen. So there you are, very similar to the bronze shield pikemen, except I think slightly stronger, as well as Parthian war elephant. So yeah, they have got quite the selection of ranged units and things at their disposal. So, I forgot the war elephant is also technically a ranged unit as well. So, 5 different ranged units for them. But yeah, so that is the Seleucids. Got quite the selection of things. You've got melee. You've got sword. You've got spear. You've got pike. You've got bow. Spear, elephant. It's kind of an all-in faction. You can do whatever you want, and then obviously you've then got access to your mercenary pool of Numidian spearmen and whatnot to supplement your units. So yeah, there's the Seleucids. Now, Numidia. Numidia is the one that I've most recently finished. They get peasants for their base unit. They also get a standard bearer and a stay banner guy, who I forgot to repaint, but never mind. So they get yeah, both of these types of units as well. Now, Numidia doesn't exist in Rome 2. Not as a faction. You know, as a named faction, I should say. In Rome 1, obviously, they exist, which is why I have Numidia. So some of these are taken from Rome 1, such as the Numidian Legionary, which I'll get to. However, in Rome 2 they don't exist. However, there is the Getae, something like that, although I think that's a Balkan tribe. But there's a very similar sounding named African tribe, which does use a lot of Numidian named units, such as, you know, Numidian noblemen or Numidian javelinmen or Numidian spearmen. And so I just use their units to supplement the Numidian offerings here, because Numidia once again is a very mounted heavy is a mounted heavy faction in Rome 1, which we obviously can't do here. So they get African archers from Rome 2. Here they are. I've given them a head wrap just to make them look a bit different to the tribal spears, as well as the Numidian javelinmen. So they have got all three options available to them of ranged units. I think this guy's bow looks pretty cool. It's the Renaissance bow repainted, which I think works very well. And then, yeah, there's the Numidian javelinmen, which we saw in the Mercenary faction. But yeah, so here they exist in the Numidian faction as well. You also have got your tribal African tribal slinger from Rome 2, your archer from Rome 1 and also Rome 2, I'm pretty sure. And then, yeah, we have our desert infantry, which are pretty decent spear units. Numidian legionary from Rome 1, who is very short. Either this guy's incredibly large, which I think is the case, or or this Numidian infantryman is very small. But yeah, so the infantryman, this guy, is a pretty decent spear unit. They cost slightly less than the legionary, but they are still a pretty decent spear unit. They obviously have got their very big wicker shield. Essentially a better Eastern infantry. That's the best I can describe it. They also have got their wrap and their sort of covering garb, which is based on the Rome 1 depiction of Numidian desert infantry. And then obviously the Numidian legionary is just a worse version of the Roman legionary, and also a worse version of the silver shield legionary as well. But yeah, again, obviously from Rome 1, because these guys do not exist in Rome 2. But Rome 1 Numidian legionary, and for an actual elite unit they do have their Numidian noblemen from Rome 2. This is the best I could do for their sort of spike pointed helmet that they wear. This Ottoman helmet repainted is unfortunately the best I could do for you. But yeah, they do have their trousers obviously, and they do have mail armour, and they also have got their ovulus shield and spear. So not particularly too many high cost units, but it does mean that they can field a pretty large army in comparison to some of the more costly units such as Rome. With their own legionaries, you know, you'll be able to obviously get out a lot more desert infantry in comparison to legionaries. But yeah, so that is Numidia. The final two that I have to show here is Germania and a Roman Republic faction, which I will leave until last. Now, Germania is interesting because originally I was just going to lump German units in with the Celtic units, but then I remember that both in Rome 1 and Rome 2, the German tribes do get a lot of unique units, so I decided to split them up into their own faction, which is where the Germanic Axeman has gone. So, yeah, our good old friend, the Germanic Axeman, is here, still just as amazing as ever. They do get barbarian peasants as their really crappy units. They obviously also get a standard bearer and a stay banner guy, so they do have both options for this. They get for ranged units, they get Cimbri bow women, So the first female unit, I guess I think I've done here, which is from the Daughters of Mars, I think, DLC for Rome 2. But yeah, so there's their bow infantry. They do also have skirmisher warband and horse runners. Horse runners from the Animals of War or whatever it's called DLC, I think, from Rome 2. But yeah, so there's these guys. These guys are a lot quicker at moving as well as at attacking, I think, in comparison to the skirmisher warband. They also have got a bigger shield, and also have got some stripy trousers just to give them a bit of a different look. And they also have got a cape, animal pelt cape as well, because I just thought that looks most like how their depiction in Rome 2 appears. As for melee infantry, spear warband and club levies are your cheapest units. The spear warband is essentially a Celtic warrior. They're very similar. I think they have the same ability. They are pretty much just a reskin, of the Celtic warrior, but still cheap spear unit. Same with the clubber. Clubber is just a cheap melee unit. They have got an ovular shield instead of the round shield of the warband, or levy, I should say, and they do also have their club as well. So there's those guys. They're your cheap attacking units. You've also got round shield swordsmen from Rome 2, who I think they should have something painted on there. Yeah, you can't quite see it because of the sun. The way the sun is pointing, they're in shadows. But yeah, they have got a slight black decal on the round shield. But yeah, they're your basic swords unit. Not as good as legionaries, which is why they cost 110 instead of 120. But you know, they do have their long sword and round shield, and they're your basic sword unit, sword melee unit. Obviously, we've seen the Germanic Axeman. As for more elite units, now, what we've got here, we've got Woden's Spears, which is the Woden Spears, essentially. They are your more elite spear unit. They do not have Foolish Jump, like these two guys. They have got the Night Charge. I think they can also projectile block as well, but they are your better spear units, so they will use their strengths to cut down their enemies in the name of Woden. But they're your more hold the line spear units, which is why these guys have got the stay banner guy. So these guys can hold the line for you. Chosen Axemen are from Rome 1. They are just a big axe guy, much like the Celtic long swordsman, actually, come to think of it. They cost 10 less than the Celtic swordsman. Not sure how they compare in stats, but yeah, they essentially have got a big axe, which is the Berserker axe from the base game. No shield, obviously, very little armor based on their Rome 1 depiction, and yeah, this is just them. They are a strong but poorly defended unit. I think that's the best to put it. Swordmaster is your strong melee, strong sword unit. Very similar to the Celtic nobleman or something along those lines. They obviously have got their long sword. They are better than a legionary. This guy's also incredibly big in comparison to the other guys. I don't know why, but you know, that's him. They also have got their cape and mail armor. They also have got a helmet, which I'm using one of the World War II helmets because it was the best analog for the helmet that they wear in Rome 2. But yeah, so that's your stronger hold the line sword unit. As for the final two, we've got the Berserker from Rome 1, and depicted as best I could in the Rome 1 attire. Unfortunately, there is no wolf pelt, or you know, wolf headpiece in the game. So the best I could do is repaint a bear. Repaint a bear and give them the tribal cape as well. But hopefully it suffices good enough. I think it does at a glance. When they're in a melee, you're not really going to realise that, hold on a minute, they're wearing a bear, not a wolf. But yeah, so that's the Berserker. I think they can enrage, like the chieftain, like the Jarl from the base game, and like the naked warrior, they can also enrage. And the final thing that the Germans have is the wolf warrior, using their spiked club for extra damage. And again, best I could do is repaint the bear, but I am quite happy with how these guys turned out from Rome 2, again using the Beasts of War DLC, whatever that's called. Yeah, they are your strongest units in terms of melee defense in comparison to the Berserker. Obviously the Berserker is unable to block because they do not have a shield to protect from projectiles, whereas the Wolf Warriors do. They don't do as much damage and they don't enrage, but they can knight charge. They may also have projectile block. But yeah, they have got a club, big old club to just crunch down on whoever they're fighting. And yeah, that is the Germanic faction. They have got quite the selection of units, various ranged units, as well as various different types of melee units. They're the only faction here that has actually got clubs. So, there you go, they've got swords, spears and clubs at their disposal, as well as axes, so they kind of have a bit of everything. But yeah, they are the terrifying German faction for you. So, there's Germania. And finally, we've got the Roman Republic, which is using, again, a bunch of Rome 2 and Rome 1 units. They obviously have access to the pleb, mercenary italic velites, because something's gone wrong with your head. But yeah, the mercenary italic velites, because if I was to make Roman velites, they would look identical, so I thought, you know what, we'll just use the mercenaries. So the mercenary italic velites are in here, along with the Gallic hunters, also italic slingers. So they've again got all three types of ranged melee unit, ranged unit at their disposal. So there's their offerings for that. They've obviously got a Signifer and a Vexillarius. They are taken from the Imperial Roman faction, except they have got the uniform of a Hastati. Before we get to Hastati though, a couple of other melee units. We do have the Rorarii, or Rorari, from Rome 2, which were the citizens too poor or too old to serve in the regular Roman army, and they would be positioned at the rear lines along with the Triarii, for in case anyone managed to break through the Hastati and the Principes. So, yeah, there's your cheap melee unit, cheap sword infantry, only costs 90. So there's your Rorari. You do also have Volsky Spearmen from the Rise of the Republic DLC for Rome 2. So there's one of your different spear infantry offerings. Again, only have got a helmet on, and they're pretty much identical in look, now that I come to think of it, to the Rorari. But yeah, so they're the Volsky Spearmen for a cheaper spearman offering, as well as light hoplites. So there's a different hoplite. I think they are identical or nearly identical in terms of stats to the Volsky Spearman. It just is dependent on whether you want a hoplite or a Volsky Spearman in your army. Now we come to the main Roman infantry. We've got the Hastati, we have the Principes and the Triarii. So there's the three different types of Roman units. There's the Hastati, which is where these guys come from. With the I quite like the helmet. It's the Legacy helmet on top of the Gallic helmet. So yeah, there's these guys. They have their ovular shield because it's the best I can do in tabs. Tabs for Roman offerings, at least. The only two shields Tabs has is the standard Roman shield or the ovular shield. There's no sort of rounded rectangular shield like the Hastati or Principes would have used. So the ovular shield is what they have. Here they are. They've obviously got their gladius, wearing their bronze greaves and sandwich type armour, which I forget the name of. The Principes, more heavily armoured. They have got mail armour over the top, or covering themselves for extra protection, as well as, once again, their Roman-style helmet and their bronze greaves. So they're essentially just a stronger Hastati. As for the Triarii, they are the most elite of the Republican army, and they do have their spear as well as their shield. And to make them look different, I have given them the more sort of musculata type type body armor, as well as their mail armor underneath that, so they are extra protected, as well as their bronze greaves and also a different style helmet as well, so they actually get a different type of plume as well. And in command, they do have a general, because I didn't want to just reuse the legatus or the legate from the Imperial faction. This guy is slightly weaker in terms of stats, but he also costs less. He has got 350 health, which is why he costs 350, in comparison to the 400 health of the Imperial legate. And there he is. So yeah, there's the offerings for the Republic faction. All of this actually started with me making the Republic faction, because I didn't want to, for Republic historical battles, I didn't want to just keep on using Imperial Rome. So instead, we now have got a dedicated Republic faction, and that marks the end of everything that I have for the Total War project. It's been a long video, I'm sure. I don't actually know how long this has been, but probably very long. I have been rambling a little bit explaining all these units. But there is all of your offerings. Obviously, if you want to transition at any point from the Republic to the post-Marian reforms, then you do obviously have Roman Republic. Obviously, Rome here has got the standard legionaries of your Marian reforms. But yeah, so there's your current offerings. If you do have any suggestions for units that could go in from either of the Total War games, that could go into any of these factions, or how to rework some of the existing factions that I can't do, such as Scythia or Armenia or something like that, then do let me know, and I'll see in the comments, and I will see what can be done about it. And obviously all of these will be available on the Tabs workshop, and I will leave a link to my mod.io page in the description for you to go to, and then you can subscribe to as many or as few of these as you want. So yeah, there is all of the factions. One last quick revolve from Mercenaries: Persia, Carthage, Germania, Greece, Numidia, Seleucids, Pontus, Celts, Rome, and the Republic. There's everything. So I will thank you all for watching. Let me know of units and which is your favourite faction if you have one, and goodbye.